Hello and welcome to Badger Talks Live, where we bring exciting happenings, resources, and talent from the UW flagship campus to the people of Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Joseline Yinavarvera, a second-year MBA student at the Wisconsin School of Business. I'm specializing in brand and product management with a certificate in entrepreneurship. For April, Badger Talks Live is shining light on the Wisconsin School of Business. Today, we'll be focusing on two critical units housed in the School of Business. Michelle Somes-Booher is the center director of UW Small Business Development Center, and Dan Olszewski is the Goldberg Family Director for the Weinart Center for Entrepreneurship. Today, they'll be talking about how interest in entrepreneurship has increased nationally, and how new approach to teaching and how a new approach is to teaching are inspiring entrepreneurs to increase the likelihood of their success. I'm super excited to introduce them and listen to what they have to say, as I work with Black entrepreneurs to help them build, grow, and scale using marketing and business strategies through my marketing firm, Black Build & Co. So without further ado, let's get started. Michelle has experience in business planning, lean startup, marketing, and financial and operations strategy. In addition to serving as director, she also sees clients and primarily works with established businesses. She assists clients by improving operations, increasing sales, and incorporating sound financial practices as they grow. Her clients have been featured on Shark Tank, the White House Demo Days, Wisconsin Governor's Business Plan Competition, SBA National Showcase, and spotlighted in numerous local, state, and national publications. Michelle was named Wisconsin's SBDC State Star in 2020, and she earned her Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration and an MBA from Central Michigan University. Dan teaches Capstone Entrepreneurship Wave course, which I am blessed to be a part of and absolutely love, and was one of the co-founders of Mortgage Entrepreneurial Bootcamp for UW graduate students in STEM programs. Olszewski currently serves as board of director for First Business Bank Incorporated, a National Guardian life insurance company. He also serves as CEO and director of various firms and nonprofits. Olszewski graduated from UW-Madison with his bachelor's in economics and computer science and received an MBA from Harvard. Both Michelle and Dan will be taking questions through at the end of the presentation, but should you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So to kick off today's presentation, please welcome Michelle.
Thanks, Jocelyn. We're glad to be here today to talk about your business ideas and how to go from having an idea to making it into a business. So with that, we'll get started. Dan and I are lucky to work together within this Wisconsin School of Business and have been doing presentations on lean startup and business model canvas for several years together. So we're excited to share this with you today. We're going to cover the business model canvas, kind of a new tool, relatively new tool for laying out your business idea. And we'll talk about testing your startup assumptions. And then how do you make the decision? Do you keep going with this business idea? Is it a no-go, or do you make a pivot? So I'm going to get started today by talking about the business model canvas. Business model canvas is a tool that came about approximately 12, 13 years ago. And it was developed by a gentleman named Alexander Oosterwalder. And he developed this concept around his PhD dissertation work and created a book called Business Model Generation. And what he proposed is that in some business cases, it's not appropriate to write a full-blown business plan early on. You're better off testing the model and thinking about how all areas of the business integrate and work together early on, and then creating some tests to see if this is what your customers actually want. A business model describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value, which is a little bit of a new concept for some folks. You know, we talk a lot about business planning and what are we going to do operationally, but we don't often talk about what the model of the business looks like. And that's what this tool tends to focus on. It's a great place to start when you just have an idea for a new business. It really forces you to see how your operations, your marketing, your value proposition, what it is that you're trying to sell or do, integrates all together. The tool is iterative and it's a discovery process. It's also very visual, which is one of the things I really love about it. It allows a user to see how all the aspects fit together. If I were to ask you to sit down and write a business plan immediately once you have your idea, a business plan, our business plan template is 30 pages long. So you don't get to see how all the pieces integrate together. This is what the business model canvas looks like. There are 9 building blocks to the business model canvas, and they integrate and work together. So what I'd like to do today is walk you through each one of the 9 building blocks and show you what goes in each so you can have a full understanding of how you can take your idea and start to map it out. The very first slide, or the very first step in working with the business model canvas is to understand who your customers are. You know, we are trying to create, deliver, and capture value for someone. As I like to say when I work with entrepreneurs, if you don't have any customers, you don't really have a business. They're the most important person in your business. So while you may have a really great idea, you first have to figure out who it is that you want to sell this to. And if we look at the business model canvas, the customer segments are over here located on the right-hand side. And let me just show you where it is on the canvas here. So right over here on the right-hand side. When you think about your customer segments, what you're really wanting to do is understand who it is that you're capturing this value for. So I'm going to suggest that we go back over and make sure that we define our business idea right from the beginning. So we're going to go over to the box marked value proposition. When I work with entrepreneurs, what I typically tell them is to finish this sentence first. I sell, and then fill in the blank. Tell me what it is that you're planning to do. Do you have a new app? Are you brewing beer? Do you want to open a service business? Are you a consultant? What is it that you want to do? Once you're done describing what it is that you sell, tell me what about it makes it unique or special. What is it that you're going to do in this business that's going to make people want to come and buy from you? What is the offering that you're bringing forward? Once you've got that clear in your mind, then you can go back over here to your customer segments, and you can then tell me who those folks are that you're planning on selling it to, whether you're selling to a unique customer or whether you're going to be selling it to another business. So you can be a B2C, business to consumer, or you can be a business to business customer. You want to define that customer through demographic data and through what we call psychographics. The difference is demographics are things that we can measure. So this might be age, gender, geographic location. It could even be things like income level. You know, so those are things that we could easily do research on. A psychographic piece of information is what your customers think, feel, want, need. It's a little trickier to figure out, but also important to understanding your customer. You can do the same for business to consumer or business to business customer. The next box we go to is channels. Channels tell us through which touch points we're going to interact. So when you're working with channels, it's where and how you're going to reach your customer. Very important to understand how you're going to reach those customers. Are you going to use social media? Are you going to use direct sales? Are you going to be selling to them online? Are you going to be in a brick and mortar location? How it is that you're going to reach them. The next box we'll talk about is customer relationships. Customer relationships is a box that really talks about how you're going to acquire customers and how are you going to keep your customers. In what ways will you work with your customers? An example of this might be, I could be very transactional. In other words, somebody buys something from me and I sell it to them and they're gone. Or I could be very high touch. In other words, I walk them through the process of purchasing this item. I interact with them on many ways. I might email them, I might call them, I might provide extra assistance to them. In which ways am I going to integrate with that customer? An example I like to give here is the experience of going to get a cup of coffee. If I go to the gas station to get a cup of coffee, I expect that to be fairly transactional, right? So I walk in, I fill the cup, I go up and I pay for it. I don't expect anything fancy. I spent 99 cents on that cup of coffee, and that's the relationship I have with that business. But if I go to a local coffee shop, I expect that experience to be different. I expect to walk in and perhaps there's nice music playing, there's nice seating area. It's just more comfortable. I have a wider range of options to choose from. I'm probably going to pay more for that. One of the coffee shops I go to, they ask your first name and they write your name on the cup. And so it's just two different types of experiences. Both experiences are perfectly acceptable, but it's understanding which experience that you want to provide. And that really speaks to your value proposition and to the type of customers that you have. So that's the customer relationship box. The next one is revenue streams, and revenue streams is pretty self-explanatory. This is we wrote in the value proposition box, I sell, and this is, how do you make money? So in this particular box, what you're trying to do is understand, do you sell by the unit? Do you sell by the gross, the case, the hour? How is it that you're going to bring revenue into your company? If we go over to the other side of the canvas, we're going to start with key activities. This is, what do I have to do as a business owner in order to operate? And you might want to think about this. If you were a bakery, you would say, I have to bake the items, right? That's one of your key activities. But I might also have to package them. I might have to do marketing. I have to order supplies, all of the high level things that are going to be involved in creating my business. Key resources have to do with what resources does the business currently have in place. So this might be things like personnel. It might be a piece of equipment. It might be your website, anything that you have internally that you already own that you need to operate your business. Conversely, key partners are people or organizations that help you run your business. So this could be, a key partner could be your supplier. It could be your accountant. It could be an attorney. It could be a delivery service, anyone that's on the outside of your business that helps you making sure that your business operates correctly. And then down at the bottom, cost structures are all of the key costs that your business will have. So these are all of your expenses. And when you're a startup entrepreneur, when you're just exploring an idea, it's important to consider operating costs. This is the costs that you'll have on an ongoing basis. And it's also important to look at your startup costs. Startup costs are one-time costs for your business. What I really like about the business model canvas is we've now covered all aspects of operating and owning this business in one visual tool. When you sit down to work on this, I want you to think of it in this manner. Everything that you're seeing on the right-hand side of the canvas, and we can draw a real quick line here, everything on the right-hand side of the canvas, it touches the customer. So the customer understands who they are and what their needs are. They see what you're selling or what your offer is and understand what your value proposition is. They understand the costs. They understand how you've interacted or the touch points and the relationship that you have. Everything on the left-hand side of the canvas has to do with the way that you operate the business. What are the activities that you had to do in order to get ready to provide this service or sell this good? What resources did you have internally? What were the costs or expenses? Another example I like to give, if you think of this like a restaurant, the right-hand side of the canvas is like the front of the house. It's everything that you would see as a customer. And the left-hand side is like the back of the house. As a consumer at a restaurant, you don't understand where they purchased all of their food. You don't know necessarily all the steps that it took to prepare the food, who's working in the kitchen, what those expenses were, and so forth. One key important part here is when we divide this in half, there's one box that touches both sides of this conceptual canvas, and that's the value proposition. What you're selling and what makes you unique, special, what value you're trying to offer is extremely important to have that well defined as a new business owner, or when you, because if you change that value proposition, it's very likely that will change all the other boxes around it. It's very important that you get that right. And getting it right happens by creating a set of assumptions and doing a set of tests. So in the PowerPoint, we've shared with you the 9 building blocks. And there's lots of videos on this topic. So if you were to Google business model canvas and want to see this, several examples or more examples, you can do that. There's one right here that's embedded into this particular PowerPoint. And I want to give you a few quick tips when you're filling it out for the first time if you've never done this. The first one is think in bullet points. It's a 1-page canvas. So you want to think very high level, and you want to get your main ideas. You don't want to be in the weeds with details. The other one is think in the present. When you're planning a business, a lot of times it's easy to get very excited about what you might do 6 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road. But think about what you're going to do in the first iteration of this business. Be customer focused. Customers are the most important person in your business, and you have to meet their needs. Remember that we're talking about a business model that creates a value and captures value for the customer. It's important to add information as you learn more, and Dan's going to talk a little bit about that. And it's okay for you to leave sections blank. It's perfectly okay if you don't have all the answers when you just came up with your business idea. As a matter of fact, I find it very helpful not to have all the answers, because that kind of tells you where you need to go next, the things that you need to be working on as somebody with a new business idea. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and he's going to talk about testing your business model.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And so we've walked through the business model canvas, and that is something you can really fill out at the onset when you have your idea. But then when you want to try to de-risk your idea and really test it, I'll be talking about some of the techniques you can use to move forward. And a lot of people think about a startup as actually a vehicle to test your business model. And you've got the assumptions, but you need to test that. They've done a lot of research, and most startups have their 4 main risks that you face in any startup. First is the technology risk. And this is easily thought of as, does the product work the way you are claiming it does? Probably a simple example of that is 2 years ago, if you were Moderna or any other startup in the vaccine realm, your number 1 risk was a technology risk, because is your vaccine going to work? And if so, you have a very different outlook than if it fails there. So that's the first risk, is the technology risk. The second one is an economic profit risk, that if you are able to do everything you set out to do, the product works as you think it's going to, the customer is willing to buy it, and you do all of that, can you still make money doing that? Over the years, I've seen a lot of startups in the biofuels realm, or kind of alternative energy, green energy, which often run into this issue where the product it works, people want to buy it, but at only a certain price. And if oil's at too low per barrel, all of a sudden you can't make money with your green product or biofuel. So that's the risk you're running there. And the next one is the market risk. And this is simply, will the customer or market actually, do they want what you're selling? Are they willing to change their behavior to buy what you're selling? And if you look at these top 3, Quite often, we ask people, which of the three do you think causes most startups to fail? They would say the technology risk is the biggest one. Actually, the vast majority of startups that fail is because they got the market wrong. And this market risk is the one that did them in. And that's our thinking is how can, and our focus will be on how can you really de-risk that portion of it. And the fourth risk, which I'm not going to spend much time on, but is just an important one, is the team risk. And this is if you really need a team to accomplish anything in your startup, if the dynamics turn toxic or you have some really bad relationships or hiring decisions there and the team implodes, even if you've got a great idea, that can be the downfall of any of these startups. So the goal of your startup is really to address these risks and de-risk them, answer the questions before you run out of resources. And the resources I'm talking about here are typically either time and or money. And how you go about that is something we'll talk about on the next slide. In fact, this ties back very nicely to Michelle's discussion on the business model canvas, because we can overlay the three main risks on that very same canvas and look at which of these do we think are key ones and which do we want to delve into and do our work on in deciding about our assumptions. Next slide. And part of the reason for this is you as an entrepreneur need to be very open to your startup assumptions being wrong. And this often goes against our human nature. But when you do start off and you have this idea, this vision, you put it down on the business model canvas, and then you need to really test it to make sure that your assumptions are correct, because they are often wrong. I want to stress that. It is something that's really hard to get right. In fact, it's almost impossible, no matter how gifted the entrepreneur is, to get all of their assumptions right. This is due to the fact that, especially if you're working with a really new a new market, it's something really innovative, it's never been done before, it's hard to look at what's out there and just extrapolate to how your idea is going to work. And even markets and customers, they tend to be very nuanced, and there are a lot of very unique situations that can throw any idea for a bit of a curve. So you want to really these assumptions and learn from them. And the term we use a lot in entrepreneurship is pivot. And this just means when you discover something that's wrong, you don't quit, but you learn from that and adjust accordingly to something that's related but different in your idea. You change it up in some way based on what you've learned from your situation. And this is something that you can go back. There are some great quotes. I always like the Ford quote about failure is just a resting point, an opportunity to begin again more intelligently. I think it captures a lot about these experiments, these testing your assumptions, and then pivoting to do something that's going to be more likely to be successful. And next slide, please. Now, you often think about the entrepreneur as this great visionary who has clairvoyant, forward-looking abilities, that they see the future and they are brilliant in designing a business and business model that fully exploits that future and leads to their success. If you actually dig into many very successful startups, you'll realize that what they started with and what they ended up being successful with are two different things. And just throw out a few different examples here of companies that you probably have heard of or maybe have even used, that how they started is actually fairly different in some material ways to where they ended up and what they're doing today. Starbucks, something that probably most of us have been in. When they got started, their initial model was very much wanting to mimic what they viewed as the Italian coffee house culture, which meant the baristas were wearing bow ties and they had opera music piped in, and they didn't have any chairs because they wanted you just to get your coffee at the counter, maybe drink it there, and then get out. Imagine that today, where their key strategy is the third place, that it's the place you're going to go when you're not at work and not at home, that they want you hanging out, that they've replaced the opera music with much more modern contemporary music. That's their new model. Pixar, the very well-known movie studio that was acquired by Disney a few years ago, that did Toy Story and does some wonderful animated movies, actually originally got its start as a hardware company for a graphics card in the early days of the personal computer. And they produced a short demo film for a trade show to show the great graphics that their card would have. What people said, boy, that was a really good video, that short demo. Could you do something a little longer? And they went from that short demo to doing the shorts that appeared before Disney movies to the full-length feature films, and then were acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars by Disney. Not at all with the vision of being a movie studio. Quite the opposite. They were a hardware company. The Post-it note that many of us have used is one that was actually the technology, and they had the product for 5 years, couldn't find any use for it. They had it out there and truly was a solution in search of a problem. And then one of the engineers said, at my church, one of the problems we have in the hymnals is if you're in the choir, you open it up and the pieces of paper are falling out. This was a better solution for that, and was the one of the first applications. Then they ended up sending it out in free samples, and people came up with other applications that the company hadn't even thought of going forward. Groupon is another company that got its start as a social movement organizer, trying to institute change in neighborhoods and local municipalities, but they found out what people really wanted to use it for was to negotiate a better price at the yoga studio or some local business, and that's where they found their success. Some of these go back for decades as well. Waterloo tool cabinets, they make the Craftsman. They got their start as a tool manufacturer selling to Sears Roebuck over 100 years ago, and the buyer at Sears said, the tool you're selling us, that's just so-so, but the box you sent it in is really good. They listened to that customer feedback and created a toolbox, and have gone on to find success in that. So the key message here is, you go in as an entrepreneur, you listen to what the customer is saying, you're open to that feedback, and figure out where you're getting traction, what the customer likes, and move forward from there. Next slide, please. And the way you can speed up that process is, as the entrepreneur, really think about designing experiments to de-risk your business. And by this, I mean, look at your business model canvas. When you have taken that first cut at it, what are some of those key assumptions? As Michelle mentioned, are there some that, boy, it's a blank here. I really don't know what that is. Are there others that you are maybe a bit more uncertain on, and it will be critical to your success? That if I'm wrong on this assumption, this business is dead in the water, and I need to prove it. Those are the ones you want to start to test as early as possible. And the one way, and to think about this, is you're not merely trying to sell your product, you're really trying to learn. So try to minimize the amount of money, the amount of time you spend with and maximizing the amount of learning, the amount of feedback you're getting on any of these ideas. And these can be fairly, I'll call them coarse ideas before they come fine. Just you're trying to do something what's called develop a MVP, a minimum viable product. This isn't your final product. This is something that serves as a proxy to test one concept of your business. When they got started, Airbnb is a good example of, you could lay out that business model. And many people, myself included, would have said that the concept of strangers being willing to let other strangers stay in their house, even for money, or want to stay in some stranger's house for money, it would be a doubtful assumption, and not something that people would be willing to do. Airbnb, when they started, just put something out there in their own house, selling, I think it was a futon during a big conference in their hometown, and saying, hey, I know hotels are hard to get. You can stay on our futon for X number of dollars. And lo and behold, strangers were willing to sign up for that. So testing those concepts in a non-scalable, coarse way, just to feel comfortable that, yeah, customers are willing to do that. Next slide. And there are many, many experiments that you can run on this to help test some of your ideas. It really depends on what assumptions you think are most important, what do you want to test, and what your business idea is. I'll just talk about a couple examples here. As I said, there are numerous other ones you can test and experiments you can run. One that I like is Google Trend Analysis. It's very easy, and just can Google that term, and it will show you, based on your region, how prevalent the search terms are for whatever your product is. So if you are opening a new restaurant and you think that, boy, a lot of people are looking for Polish fusion cuisine or something like that, go to Google Trend Analysis, see, are people typing that in? Are they looking for whatever I'm going to be selling? If it is something that wow, a lot of people are looking for this versus nope, no one is, that will provide you with some guidance on, is this something that how easy will it be to attract customers going forward? Another very simple, low cost, in fact, zero cost, and you can probably do it in just 5-10 minutes, is you can create a website landing page where you are going to have create your product company website landing page, and then have something where you want people to kind of click here for more information, click here to give me your email to be the first customer to order this product. You can tie that in with going out to Facebook and buying some AdWords or Google AdWords, and seeing if you can write a marketing campaign that's going to get people to click through and at least go to your landing page. Even if you don't have a product, you can ask them for their email so that they'll be the first ones to learn about it and show that they're committed and really interested in this product. You can also build a prototype. This is something that would be an unfinished, it's a product that just helps, isn't going to be the final product, but is close enough that people can react to it, customers can react to it. If you are developing an app for your iPhone, you could use just some graph paper and what you think the screen would look like without doing any coding. You can just hand draw the different buttons, the different information, different screens that would show up. You can create a product that doesn't look good, but still functions the way your product is going to, and get feedback from customers on that. Does it do what they need it to do? You can also do something called mock-up report results. A few years ago, I had a student team that was working on a adapter that would go on for weightlifting. And it would do things like keep track of the number of reps, the acceleration, the velocity, the balance of the bar, have all kinds of metrics. And before they did a lot of engineering on that and tracking that and building the product to do that, we had them create these mock-up reports so that they could go to the strength and conditioning coach and say, hey, if you bought my product, you could get a report like this on every person in the gym. And they got feedback from the strength and conditioning coaches saying, okay, well, actually, I don't care about this. I really would like to know this, and other things like that allow them to then create the product that's going to meet the customer's needs and not just what they think the customer is going to want. So there's just something you want to do is think about customizing these examples so that they fit whatever your needs are and whatever your key assumptions are, and be creative on that, but try to do it in a low-cost way to learn the most. Next slide, please, Michelle. So you've done your business model canvas, you have run some of these experiments, you've done some tests, you've learned from that, and you'll face the situation then of really three options. Go forward, which is probably rare that your vision was perfect and everything you thought was true was absolutely true, and you can go forward with that. The second, I'll actually skip, I'll say pivot's the other option, where you learn from that and you say, well, okay, my idea didn't resonate with the customers. They told me either I needed to change my product, or I'm talking to the wrong customer, or there's something else that's wrong in my business model. And at that point, you pivot and you either go back to the drawing board on your product and you add some features, you change it in some manner, or you realize, oh, I was trying to sell to this customer segment. Actually, the customer segment that wants it is this other customer segment, and I need to change my marketing focus and sales focus and go after them. So very important with those sorts of pivots where you you alter your business model. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, that's why the business model canvas is so powerful, because you can have this up on your wall, you can have some Post-it notes, and you can just tear those off when you learn something and you discover, oh, my assumption was wrong. Out with the old assumption, in with the new one, run some new experiments. So you can pivot and iterate fairly quickly. And then last but not least, at some point, you'll move to a no-go situation where you have probably, and I think that happens when you've run out of pivots, and you can run out of pivots for a bunch of different ways. One, you've run out of time and money that you actually like, no, I need to get a job again because I don't have the resources to continue this. Or you run out of ideas that you pivoted, and at this point you're like, I've tried everything and I don't see the next one. I'm not sure what the next step would be, and then you move to the no-go. And this is not something you've got a kind of mathematical formula to follow, but if you do run these experiments, it will dramatically increase your confidence that your assumptions are right and you de-risked your business so that you'll be more confident in its success, and it will increase the likelihood of success as you move forward, because as you all know, being in a startup and starting any venture is one that has a fair amount of risk involved in it. And next slide, please, Michelle. So thank you very much. We both want to thank you and now open it up for any questions that may have come in. I think
great, Michelle and Dan. Yeah, thank you so much. Anthony, I'm going to ask you to start my video. Thank you. So hi, everybody. Fran Paleo-Moyer, Badger Talks producer. We're talking to Michelle and Dan today about entrepreneurship. And boy, I'm going to mimic what John Polparski says in the chat, that this was very easy to follow. And you really summed this up in an easy to digest way. I know that there's more to, right, starting a business in terms of forms and other information. Where do people go for that kind of stuff in terms of knowing like what kind of paperwork you need to complete, and where are those resources?
I'll let Michelle, that's right in your bailiwick.
Sure. Well, we are a resource-rich state. That's the first thing I'm going to say. And there are lots of places that you can go for help. So the short answer here is, if I wanted to file a legal entity in the state of Wisconsin, I would go to Start in Wisconsin. That's the website, Start in, the one-stop business portal is what the state has put up. And so Start in Wisconsin is a set of resources. You could say, all right, I'm not sure. which resource I want, go to Start in Wisconsin, type in what you're looking for and what region of the state you're in, and that would pop up. The One-Stop Business Portal is where you'd go to file paperwork. To start that process. If you need assistance with any of that, you've got the Small Business Development Center network, you've got your local campuses that have lots of entrepreneurship areas, reach a really rich ecosystem of resources. And if you land in one resource and they're not sure how to help you, one thing that we know for sure in our ecosystem that is, if you land with Dan or you land with me and we're not the right person, we'll find you the right person.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And just, I want to add one little thing to that, just because if we do have some students on the line or parents of students or relatives of students, a couple of years ago, the state passed a law that if you're a student in a college or tech school, you can file for an LLC for free. So it's a really nice, save you some money. And I think a great thing if you're a student entrepreneur to get started early.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Heather Jane says, so very informative. Thank you from a new business owner. So very helpful resources. So we were talking with Jake Dean and Greg DeCroy last week about supply chain issues. And with the pandemic and with supply chain issues, so what all have you been seeing in terms of trends of entrepreneurship? Interesting that I could see there being opportunities, but then also obviously maybe not a good time to start. So what have you been seeing in terms of trends?
I mean, I would say on the supply chain side, there are definitely, that's the two-edged sword, and you put it, it's a true headache for many businesses. I mean, huge headache, but at the same time, it creates some opportunities. So you're getting some entrepreneurs, brokers that are being very creative on finding new sources for chips and other items. Companies are having to become far more innovative in redesigning their product to use different components because they can't get a hold of other ones. So you're seeing some opportunities there. Probably the thing to be a little careful there is how long do we think the supply chain issues will last? You don't want to build you can make a kind of quick hit, but if you think that it's going to be back to a more stable state in a year or two, it may be a kind of a quick business opportunity. But people are making a lot of money these days if they're solving those customer needs.
Yeah, it's so interesting seeing some of your risk information. And for example, Google Trends analysis, that's nothing anybody ever thought of 10 years ago, right? So how drastically it seems and how quickly the landscape has changed for startups. Any comments on that?
I would say that the barrier to entry for a startup is now a lot lower than it maybe was a decade or two ago, because of the fact that we have so much information. And there's a lot of things that you can do. Dan's example of putting up a website landing page to test your idea. Before there were websites, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. You couldn't get a facsimile of what your business might look like and put it out there for folks. So I think that's really important, that there's a lot of resources that are available to entrepreneurs that just didn't exist before.
Yeah, that's a great, I never thought of it that way, but it's sort of like the investing world too, right? You can download an app and start investing, whereas before you had to have portfolio managers and whatnot. So yeah, the digital landscape really has made it easier in so many different ways. That's very fascinating. So we do know that we have teachers who tune into Badger Talks Live and share these talks with their students. So I always like to ask presenters, did you both think you were going to get involved in business education, or how did you start your career path?
Start us, Michelle.
Sure. Well, I come from 5 generations of entrepreneurs. So for me, when some people have those, family history of farming or teaching or what have you, for me, it was always people who started their own businesses, and including myself. I owned a retail business. And I also like this aspect of being able to teach and guide and help. So it was sort of a natural fit for me. I've taught entrepreneurship at the collegiate level, but I've also teach it, entrepreneurship, to business owners, to folks that want to start. So for me, it's been always in my family and in my background and sort of what we do.
That's awesome. That's
And I'd say mine's somewhat similar in that my mom was a high school science and home ec teacher, and my dad was a banker and on a family farm. So I was probably predestined to end up doing this, given that combination. I was also very active in FBLA when I was in high school, and enjoyed that, and I very much enjoy business, and have had the opportunity to get back into get into teaching the next generation, which has been a lot of fun.
excellent. Well, you're both very good at what you do. So please keep up the good work. And thanks for sharing these great resources with the people of Wisconsin. We're always so happy to showcase all of the exciting resources coming out of campus. And these are certainly two great centers for people to know about and utilize. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Well, we're going to continue our conversation with the Wisconsin School of Business. Next week, we're going to be talking to the head of the School of Business, Dr. Vallabh Sambamurthy, also more casually known as Dean Samba on campus. He's the dean of the Wisconsin School of Business. That's next Tuesday, April 19th at noon. And he's going to be talking about how business education is evolving to fit today's digital economy, among many other things. So please tune in. Also visit badgertalks.wis.edu. You can check out the Badger Talks podcast. Ben tunes in, checks in with our Badger Talks live speakers, giving a little preview to upcoming talks. He did chat with Michelle, so please check that out. See the upcoming schedule of Badger Talks live and other hosted events that are happening all over the state. We just posted next month, we're going to be talking to the UW Dance Department and featuring some of the great work that's happening there. Sign up for our email list so you catch the first ones to catch and hear about upcoming talks. Consider a donation to Badger Talks. We are grant funded, and search the roster of over 400 UW faculty and staff who generously donate their time to travel and virtually meet with people like you around the state. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.